He's a dog named Brian. I'm a cat's named Ryan. Oh, you didn't know? Then you better call somebody and tell them to subscribe, listen, watch, download, and share, because it's time for a very special episode of Oh, You Didn't Know with the Road Dogg. Before we get into why it's a special episode, let's catch up with you, Dog. Man, how you feeling? You look
Yeah,
cute.
Ryan, you never cease to pop me on the entrance, man. Thank you for bringing the energy, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm feeling good, man. I cut some grass today on my John Deere zero turn. It's a 60-inch blade.
Is that the
Ryan?
Ryan, it's cutting the grass.
Yeah,
I like
Ryan,
it.
it's true what they say.
What's that?
Nothing runs like a deer.
How about that?
Cut
Look at that.
and send that out, Steve, if you would, to try to get John Deere.
Yeah, I think we could look for some extra sponsorship opportunities, and maybe they could send you a little tractor just to try it out.
I'd love to add to my collection because I've got 3 John Deere tractors.
Dog, just a couple of weeks ago, you were in the UK, reunited with your tag team brother from another mother, Billy Gunn, and we all want to know how that felt.
Yeah, it was awesome. Look, it's always awesome when Billy and I get together. It's like we've never been apart, to be quite honest with you. That's just the kind of friendship we have now. And like I've said on the podcast before, we've grown up together. So we're in a really good place, both of us individually. So it's really cool when I get to see him because it feels like we're both really grateful for where we're at and what we're doing. So yeah, it was great to see him. The fans in the UK are always great, so polite. To be quite honest, I hate to second America on anything, but we could learn a little lesson in respect from those people because, man, the people in Liverpool were so respectful. It really stuck out to me and Billy. We talked about that. So, yeah, I had a great time. I appreciate you asking about it.
Screw the respect. Let's talk the energy. Like, was it good to be back in front of a live crowd performing? I feel like it's not something you've gotten done in the last few months or so.
I have not. And we actually did a Q&A during the middle of one of those days. And the people got me to, stand up and say my entrance. And Billy, of course, then had to stand up and say his 2 words. And so it was fun. It was energetic. It was an opportunity for me to tell more people about the podcast. What my way of promoting it is just kind of making it a running rib throughout any Q&A I have, where I just say, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I got a podcast now, and so it's it's bashing them over the head with it, but in an entertaining way. So I'm hoping to spread the word.
It's just a nice segue of excitement.
It was a great segue
because we're going to introduce our first special guest we've ever had on the program. And he's a man who's literally done it all in professional wrestling, and someone you know all too well because he's family. He's your big brother, Scott Armstrong.
Hey. Welcome, Scotty.
What up, boys? How you guys doing?
The gang's back together.
I had to get a candy bowl in here as we welcomed you on so I could be ready because I just felt it had to be like old times and stuff.
I wish, dude. That was a lot of fun, and we ate a lot of candy.
Yeah, this is gonna be.
I still eat a lot of candy.
I mean, we all eat a lot of candy. Come on,
but not nose candy. We don't do that. None of us do that anymore. Well, Ryan might. I don't know. We don't test. We don't test on the show.
I don't. No, we don't. We do not have a wellness policy. But I don't do nose candy. It's not my game.
Okay.
I like to ski on the slopes, but not on those types of mountains. All right.
Basically, Scotty, we have like an AA meeting every time we come on
my
here.
wife's about to message and be like, can we get back on track right here?
Yeah. BLUECHEW.
Yeah. What's the deal? Is BLUECHEW and you bring me on? Is that the deal?
Yes, that's it. Because the polar bear, we got to use the polar bear. But yeah, no. So yeah, but we know it was a great segue, but are we not going to do the read, Ryan?
I think we'll do the read later.
Okay, I'm cool with that. So we're on to Scott Armstrong, my oldest brother, by the way.
Yes.
And so some of the notes that I read were actually incorrect because it asked Scott when he did he like it when all of his brothers followed in his footsteps, and Scott, I'd love for you to touch on that because that's not correct. Go ahead.
Brad was the first one to start. Brad started wrestling. He was 18 years old, 3 weeks out of high school. And I was actually in college at the time, and Brad was wrestling in the territory days down in, which was Southeastern back then. And I want to say 81. And I was in college going to what is now Kennesaw College. It was Kennesaw Junior College back in the 1600s when I went there. But anyway, and I would drive, they would wrestle in Montgomery, Alabama, like on a Friday night. And so I'd go to college that day and then drive. Montgomery's about 2.5 hours from Kennesaw. And I would drive there and watch Brad wrestle and see my dad. And then I would drive back. And so, man, after watching Brad, I would do it, I mean, every week if I could drive down there and watching Brad over and over and over. Next thing you know, I came down for spring break to Pensacola, and my dad goes, son, you know, there's colleges down here too. So go home and sell all your stuff and come on, move down here.
Wow.
And that's what I did. And I started going to all the wrestling matches that Brad was involved in. And next thing you know, I was next.
Wow.
And then Steve, and then a little while later after the Marines, here came Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted
to
I wanted to get that out first, Ryan, before you kind of broke into the questions. That was the only thing I noticed really that was
fixing the timeline a little bit. I used to watch Brad at the UIC Pavilion in Chicago when he was rocking the Candyman trunks and stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he had a number of gimmicks.
All right, let's start breaking into some questions and break down your career growing up in the biz and all of that. And we're going to start with the question actually for both of you guys. It's about your dad, Bullet Bob Armstrong, the patriarch of the Armstrong family. What was it like growing up with him as your dad?
Scotty, I'll let you go first.
I never really knew. Look, he was always into weightlifting, always. We always had a gym in our house since I can remember life. And he was always a wrestler as long as I can remember life. But the first time I ever really realized that, oh, wow, he's kind of a big deal, we were in a store and a family came in, and the first thing the dad said is, hey, look, that's Bob Armstrong. And that's the first time that I ever went, oh, wow. And like the age difference, I was the oldest, and then Brad was like a year behind me, and then Steve was like almost 3 years behind me, and Brian is 8 years behind me. So at that time, me and Brad were probably 6 and 5, and Steve was 2. Brian wasn't even thought up. And so, but hey, look, I got to jump in on this. Brian was the girl that they were going to have after 3 boys. Oh, we're going to have, what did they get? The biggest, loudest one of the family.
The name was going to be Jana. And so my only granddaughter's name is Jana Gale, which is Gale was after my mom. So that was to carry on. I was supposed to be a girl. And so I don't know, with today's technology and how things are,
it ain't over yet.
I might can be one tomorrow.
Well, possibly. But anyway, Bob Armstrong. So then, as time went on, watching him on TV, oh my gosh, we would watch him on TV. And back then, our television set was a huge, giant box. And with the rabbit ears on top. And as soon as wrestling was over, we were glued to it. And as soon as it was over, oh my God, we went into matches off the coffee table and all that. And our mom was one of the toughest women to ever walk the face of the earth. I'll tell you that.
As life went on and you all had these careers in the business, what was the pressure like to succeed based on coming from the success that he already had and the reputation he built?
And for me, look, the first match I ever had, I'll never forget this. It was a tag team match. It was with Brad as my partner. And I went to my dad, of course, nervous wreck, first match in front of people. And I said, hey, Dad, what is there anything you want me to do or anything I need to do? And he just smiled and said, yeah, stand on the apron and watch your brother. And honestly, that's probably the best thing he could have ever said, because I was glued to everything Brad did. And Brad was very fortunate when he started. He was in the ring with like Dennis Condrey and Randy Rhodes, Norvell Austin, and that's three dudes that could go, and
Yeah.
and that was good, old school Southern spots, tag spots, and Brad. By the time I was standing on the apron with him, he was already 2 years or a year and a half in and smooth as silk.
And imagine he learned, like you said, those old school Southern tag spots, the timing that it takes to perfect those. He learned that, like learning to wrestle. That's what you know what I mean. I don't know if that's translating, but learning to wrestle and doing it at that high level is why his timing was so perfect, and his ring presence and ring placement was all perfect. Yeah. So for me, Dad was always, he was on top when I was in middle school, and he was, it was Continental Southeastern Championship Wrestling, whatever it was down south. But he went, then he went back up to Georgia Championship Wrestling and came back, and so he was always on TV. But that's what, I watched every Saturday, because sometimes that was the only time I got to see him. These guys all got to go on the road with him and wrestle with him, and look, I wrestled with him many a times, but I didn't know him like Scotty and Brad and Steve did, because they got to go on the road with him and work with him, next to him. You know what I mean? And I mean, travel and long periods of time on the road together. And so I had that opportunity the last 10 years of his life. And so I got to know him, I felt like, for real, because once he stopped traveling, I started traveling. So we crisscrossed. And so yeah, it's really cool. I don't even know what we're talking about anymore.
Scotty, you started laughing and giggling when you heard that. You got a road story of, growing up with your dad?
I do, but I'm not sure if I can tell it. Can I? I mean,
I think you could.
Which one is it?
The gas station coming back from Montgomery.
Yes.
And
yes. Yeah. You
Are
can
you
tell
sure?
that. You could tell the nunchuck one. You can tell.
Oh, okay. So look, Bullet Bob in the locker room, everybody saw the kindest, most gentle human being, and would help you and help. Since he passed away, I've had so many guys say to me, "Your dad helped me so much," but there was another side to him, and only if he was disrespected, and he never tried to start anything. Anyway, we're coming back from Montgomery, Alabama. It's after the show. Back then, heels and baby faces, if you got caught even talking to each other, you got your notice, you were gone. And so we pull off the exit, and there's the whole 2 cars of heels. And so he goes, "All right, we'll go down the next one." We go down to the next exit and get off, and there's a guy in there, and he is just an obnoxious. We didn't know him. He was just some guy. We're trying to buy Gatorade and crackers for the ride, and he just kept going and going. And finally I said, "Hey, dude, what's your problem?" And he kept running his mouth, and all of a sudden, Bullet Bob just goozles this guy and just drags him out the door. And like at a Tom Thumb or 7-Eleven, the double doors, they fly open.
Yeah.
Well, one side they had locked. And so when he drugged the guy's face just went and just pulled the skin off his face. He just starts bleeding immediately. And our car was right there. We just filled up, and he just by the neck beals him, and the guy rolls. And you know how the gas pumps are on like a little raised up, cement.
Yep.
Yes. And so the guy just happened to come back up to his feet. And I've stood there and watched this whole thing, but the guy goes, "Yeah, 2 of y'all came whoop my ass." And my dad goes, "Do you want some more?" And the guy said, "Yeah." He hit this dude with the most beautiful punch you've ever seen. And the guy literally went between the gas pumps to the other side and just did a snow angel. And the referee was riding with us. And all of a sudden he just gets back in the car and goes, "Well, he's got a buddy in there." And I told his buddy, "Unless you want some of the same, I'd just stay in here." And I said, "Well, where's he now?" And he said, "He's in there watching his buddy get his ass whooped."
He stayed in there.
Incredible.
Oh my gosh.
It's just the other side to the Armstrongs.
Yeah. Should I tell him?
Most people that know us know these stories and know how it is. But Ryan, I don't want to get too far off of
No,
off of our track here.
we're in schedule. We're doing good.
Okay,
So
okay,
let's
good.
ask
Yeah,
this. Did Bullet Bob want his baby boys to follow in his footsteps, or did he originally want you guys to stay away?
Well, for me, I had when I was going to college, I was also working at a bank, and so like in the bookkeeping department, and so he literally told me straight up, no, you stay in school, you do, no way did he want me in the business. But and I'd watched Brad, driven down there to Montgomery and watched him so many times, and there was no way. I mean, I literally, without asking him, bought or telling him either one, bought wrestling boots, and I'd wear them around the house to break them in. I mean, I wanted it that bad, and I think finally he knew it, and he just. It's funny because I kept saying, Dad, I need you to train me. I need you to train me. And he said, yeah, okay. Because he didn't want me in the business. And the late Tommy Rogers, one of the Fantastics, bless his heart, he just happened to be wrestling in the Pensacola area. And he would take me to the ring, I mean, all the time. And we would get there way early in the day, before any of the boys. And I owe Tommy everything. I mean, he taught me so much. And then I'll never forget him telling my dad, "Oh, I think he's ready. I think he's ready to wrestle." And I couldn't wait to get in the car and say, "Dad, did you hear what he said? I can wrestle."
But Tommy said I could.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right.
With all the
Yeah,
wrestling schools and
Ryan,
training, yeah.
he didn't he didn't want me to wrestle either.
No.
Like it was. I think I don't know why it was different with Brad. I don't know. I think he treated each kid a little differently, which is how you should, right? They're all individuals. So I think he kind of went at each one individually. Anyway, I don't know why.
No, it's okay.
I interrupted you just to say that.
I was originally Scotty, I was gonna ask. Let's move on. We're off on a tangent.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Scotty,
That's my fault.
Who was your favorite wrestler growing up besides your dad?
In my youth was Mr. Wrestling #2. He was huge in Atlanta, and I mean, like one of the top baby faces, and just super push, and never, you never saw him without his mask. Yeah. And even later in life, he came and worked the Continental area a little bit, and he'd go in the shower with that mask on. I mean, he protected the gimmick. He protected it big time. But as I got older, Ric Flair. So look, Ric Flair, please let me tell this story.
Yep.
Do you have a minute where I can tell this story? So this was, I just moved down here, and I was 21, I think, and just able to get in a bar at the time. And
down where, Scott?
Oh, I'm sorry, Pensacola. Yeah, the Southeastern Territory.
Redneck
and so
Riviera.
Yes. And back in those days, each wrestling territory would get the world champion for a week. And so it was Flair's week to be in Pensacola. And he was working against my dad every night in the main event. And they were going, 50 minutes or 55 minutes or whatever. And so I go to the show, I watch them do that. And my dad goes, "Hey, Flair doesn't have a car, so I want you to go take him out wherever he wants to go, and just don't let him go to jail." And I started going, "No, Dad, hey, that's not me. No, I don't want anything to do with it." Because, I'd heard all the stories about Flair. And at this time, Flair's probably in his 30s. I mean, and already the world champion. I mean, so anyway, I watched their match, 50 minutes. I mean, long match. I take him back to his hotel. He said, "Hey, yeah, can you give me like, 45 minutes or so?" I said, "Yeah, sure." So, I go sit in the car, I come back, and he opens the door, and he's in his boxers, his Sunday go to meeting shoes with his black socks on. And he's got, back then, a hotel room had old wooden chairs, like a block chair. Yep. And he had it up against the wall in his hotel room, and he was doing step-ups. And he just opened the door and went right back to doing step-ups. And he said, "Hey, put whatever you want on the TV. Just give me a few more minutes. And he starts doing these step ups. Well, he did them forever. And I said, well, Rick, how many do you do? And he said, well, I do 10 sets of 100. And I went, well, you traveled all day and you just went 50 minutes at least with my dad. Why do you? And he said, well, 60-minute man, Space Mountain. He said, you got to live the gimmick, right? And I said, yes, sir, you do. That moment in time is etched in my mind because he was at the top of his game in his 30s, top of his game, and stayed there for a long time. But without even saying a word to me, he showed me what it took to stay at the top of your game. And man, the respect I have for that dude, his work ethic in his prime, second to none. Of course, after that, he got dressed and we proceeded to go to a bar and where he literally said, and I'm not kidding, he said, we walk in the door and everybody, it's midnight now, and everybody in there turns and sees, oh my God, it's Ric Flair.
It's Nature Boy Ric Flair.
And he literally says, barkeep, make me a pitcher of kamikazes. And the kid goes, well, Mr. Flair, I don't know how to make a pitcher of kamikazes. So, well, do you know how to make a kamikaze? And he said, well, yes, sir. He said, well, then make one and make them go all the way down the bar and hand me a pitcher. To this minute, it is the most alcohol I've seen on one bar in my life. And I mean, just 50 glasses. And Flair just took the pitcher and he just went boom, boom, all the way down. Now the entire bar is watching, no doubt about it. He just turned around with that pitcher and said, ladies, and here they came. And I won't say how that night ended.
It's good to be the king.
I remember the beginning of the night for sure.
It might not have needed Blue Chews, but if it did, you can get them with code Dogg.
That's D-O-double-G. Code Dogg.
Going back to your father for one or two more questions. Let me ask you this. Did you know that you were destined to be in the business? So he didn't want you guys to be a part of it, aside from Brad. Did you know that you were destined to be a part? Did you just feel the calling?
Actually, I wanted to do it since I remember it. I'll tell you a true story. This happened probably about 5 years ago. You know how parents, sometimes they'll just keep everything you did in school, the macaroni picture or whatever. I mean, they just keep everything. And my mom called me and said, hey, come over here. You got to see this. And they lived right across the highway. I said, okay. And me and one of my kids shot over there. She had saved, I was in the 3rd grade and I had written, my dad is a professional wrestler. I want to be a professional wrestler just like my dad. I will get married when I'm 25 years old. I will have 2 kids. She looked at me and said, everything you wrote came to be. Everything. I got married at 25. I had 2 kids. She said, why did you not write down the winning lottery numbers?
Yeah.
I said, you're right,
the first
Mom.
thing I was thinking, why didn't you write down, I'm going to become a billionaire?
Yeah. So I wanted to do it my whole life. It's funny because Brad ended up being the one, right out of high school, and he never said it once, ever.
And I don't even remember him being, and I wasn't, I was a lot younger, but I don't remember him being that into athletics. You know what I mean? Like, I know he played, baseball and football and stuff, but I don't remember him even, like, that's what the weird part to me about it was I thought he was the least athletic, and like, holy crap, I was so wrong,
Yes. Yeah, he definitely, it just didn't seem like he was going to. And then Steve was working as a bouncer at a bar and then came home one night and said, yeah, I quit. I'm going to wrestle. I mean, it was just like that. And okay. But he was always a hoss. So he was a big boy.
And he was an athlete. You know what I mean? Like, I saw that coming.
And Brian was the one that we didn't think would get in because, I mean, if you've seen the old pictures when he was in the Marines, he was just tall and skinny. I mean,
Yeah, I
and
was
so
like
you,
6'4", 170 pounds. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like it was just Bones Malone. And so, yeah, I've always wanted to be a wrestler. You know what I mean? I just didn't think I was going to be one either. Um, yeah,
And
so
then the
here we
world
are.
came together.
Yeah, yeah. The stars aligned.
yes,
So Scott, let's talk about your name because Scott's not your first name. So who decided you were gonna go by Scott?
we just, I had traveled. I mean, like once I moved to Pensacola, I started traveling to some of the towns with Brad and my dad, and the people in the crowd got to know me. Look, Georgia is where we're all from, and then the territory was mostly Alabama and Northwest Florida, and so it's like home folks, and the people are real salt of the earth. They're real people, and I just would go to the shows, and because I didn't stay in the locker rooms. I stayed outside. So the wrestling fans all knew me as, oh, that's Scott, because that's what my parents always called me, Scotty. And so I just, when it started, I mean, it was just a given. It was going to be Scott. My first name's Joseph, but I wasn't, that was my dad's real first name too. And
So I
so,
remember at work always being so confused on your email when it just never came from Scott and it was the Joseph. And you're like, who sent me this email?
yeah, I had people at NXT just not that long ago say, "Wait, you and Road Dogg are brothers?"
Yeah.
I said, "Hey, welcome to
Yeah, that's still
2022."
yeah.
You brought up your Georgia and Alabama territory days. Talk to me about what that was like when you got started.
It was 6 nights a week, same town every week. One would be, we called them spot shows, and it would be, like a little National Guard armory or a middle school gym, but it would be different towns. But all the other towns, Birmingham, Mobile, Pensacola, Dothan, all those same, we were in those same towns on the same night, every week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday was Pensacola. So everybody lived in Pensacola because it was the beach, and all the towns were, fairly short drives. We could leave at 5 o'clock, except for Birmingham, which was a 4-hour drive. Everything you could leave at 5 o'clock, be home by 1 in the morning, and next morning you get up, go to the gym, go to the beach, hang out all day, head back, shower, go on to the next town. I mean, it was this territory was awesome, and um, with that schedule being said, every wrestler in the United States, everyone in the world wanted to be here in the Pensacola territory because you could be on the beach every day and short trips and make pretty good money. And so I had the benefit then of working with some of the top talent that would come in here, and just learn from them. I'll tell you this: Tommy Gilbert, Doug Gilbert, Eddie Gilbert, the late Eddie Gilbert. His dad, Tommy Gilbert, was an old school wrestler. And look, when I started, it was tag team spots with Brad. So it was spot, 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 spot. I still hadn't learned at that time how to actually wrestle on the mat, learn how to operate in front of the people without my brother. And I'll never forget Tommy Gilbert coming in here and me getting in the car and saying and I told Tommy this story before he passed away. I said, I told him the story. I told my dad, I said, Dad, I got to wrestle somebody else. This guy is old. He doesn't want to do anything. I was young. I thought I knew everything. I had to get old to realize I don't know jack. But I'll never forget my dad said, boy, you ever say another negative word about that man, I'll pull this car over and slap your ass. You got me? And I said, and I didn't even know what I'd said. I said, yes, sir, I do. And he said, if you'll just shut your mouth and realize you don't know shit about this business, he will teach you everything about wrestling. And 6 months later, Tommy left the territory, and I cried when he left and hugged his neck and told him, I said, dude, I'll cry telling you about it. I said, I'll owe you the rest of my life, man. What a good human being he was. And he literally taught me what I did and made a living doing for the next 20 years. So yeah, I owe that dude a lot. But anyway, back to your original question, the territory was awesome. Oh my gosh. After Tommy left, I ended up, me and Arn Anderson were roommates for about a year, and holy mackerel. I was just wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, that whole era. Yeah, I didn't get to, I watched the territory, and man, I wish so much I would have been born into it, because it was a good territory and it was a good time, and there was money to be made. It was really good at that time. I just missed it. I missed it by that much.
Lessons of life learned, and we're learning about the career of Scott Armstrong, and there's so much more to talk about, but let's take a minute to save with Conrad, and when we come back, more questions for both of you and a deeper dive into Scott's career. We'll be back.
Are you feeling stuck making minimum payments on your credit card debt? SaveWithConrad.com can help, and you don't need perfect credit or money out of your pocket to do this. NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Oh, and did I mention no house payments for 2 months? Get rid of your credit card debt and lower your monthly payments right now at SaveWithConrad.com.
We're back and jumping right into it, and I'll ask this to both of you. Who was the best wrestler of the family?
Brad.
Bad by far. Yeah.
It's not even a not even a question.
There's no question.
And there's no shame in admitting you're not as good as Brad Armstrong, because like the legendary Ric Flair that we've talked about already said, top 5, maybe top 3. Ooh. Somebody's got a motorcycle, or either that maybe this is time. Maybe this
my door.
Hey, maybe this is time we go to the Taco Bell promotion. Oh crap! I forgot what I was saying.
No, you both say Brad on that, so let's.
Oh yeah, Brad.
Best entertainer in the family.
For sure. I mean, there's no doubt.
Dogg, I think his mic cut out and you didn't even get to hear him say your name. It was just like, yeah, for sure. But I think he's
it's a given. It's a given.
I don't know. I appreciate that though.
You're so humble, Dogg.
well, I don't, look, I try to say what I mean and mean what I say. And I don't like to, I don't mind saying Brad was the best.
Earlier we were talking bravado and being braggadocious.
Yeah.
So let me tell this story.
Just saying my worth.
Tell it, Scott.
All right. So Brian was just starting to wrestle in WCW, but Brian, I think you were living back at home at that time, weren't you?
No, I lived with Brad in Marietta.
Oh, okay. And so all of a sudden we're at our parents' house. Brian comes walking in, and he had got the braids put in. And back then that didn't happen. Nobody had braids, nobody. And he walked in, and the brother, me, Steve, and Brett, we laughed hysterically and said, and Brian got so pissed off, and he just went and got in his car and left with a bunch of expletives towards the brothers.
Yeah.
And
you guys were being mean to me.
And then we get to it was WCW TV, right? And he's our partner, and we're messing with him so bad because of those braids. And then the next thing you know, a few weeks go by, and JJ Dillon calls him and says, "So you ready to come to work for the Giant W and WWF at the time?" And I'll never forget this line. Brian told him, "Oh, well, I mean, you know what they've done to me here on TV for the last year or so." And he said, "What they've done to you in a year, we can change in 30 seconds. And the rest is history."
Yeah. And he's right. I mean, people get so upset now watching TV, and they go, "Oh, they didn't do this the way I wanted them to." And it's like, really? Next week we'll be back on and get another opportunity to make you happy.
Yeah. The braids were a killer, man. They were. And then it became the signature. It became, I'll never forget the time me and at the time my daughter was probably 4 or something, or 5, and my son was 2 or 3. Anyway, we walk into Walmart with Brian, and they had just had, Walmart has their morning rallies where everybody gets in a circle and heavy, and fire each other up before they go out into or used to anyway. And we literally walked past that group and everybody just turned around. That's how strong Brian and Billy were at the time on TV. And within minutes, they had all gone and bought every action figure of the Road Dogg in Walmart. And we're coming up to him and saying, will you sign this, please? The manager was raising hell with him, saying, you can't do that. Come on. And then we walk down the party aisle and there's paper plates with the Bulldog with the braids. And I remember saying, geez, those braids have made so much money.
I remember Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan was a commentator in WCW at the time, and he would call me Whoopi Armstrong because of the braids. And it actually just was, you know, in retrospect and knowing what I know now, like that was just promotion, and I didn't even know it was going on. But he was talking about my hair the whole time I'm doing a job for somebody else, you know.
Right. Yeah, Armstrong curse, man.
I had my braided hair back in those days, and we're talking mid-90s. I think it's one of the reasons I went bald was pulling it all the time.
Yeah, it hurt.
I question both of you guys. What was your favorite part of being a professional wrestler as you broke in? What was the best part in the beginning of your career?
Yeah, I don't know. You go ahead, Scott.
I mean, look, I was so busy trying to learn to do the right thing and focus on not screwing up and at the same time not hurting whoever I was working with. So anytime we got to the end of the match and there was either a giant coming up out of their seats, huge pop, or whatever the goal was at the end of the match, anytime that I was a part of achieving that, man, that was like, you can't buy that, man. That was a rush that would take you home, and you wake up the next morning and you're still on that cloud. And it's like, oh, it was just an awesome, awesome feeling for me. As I got older, I learned how to control that to get to that point. And I wasn't so focused on, oh, I hope I'm going to do this right, because I had done it enough to where I should have done it right anyway. Whether I did or not, I don't know. But yeah, just to get to the finish of a match and get the reaction that you hope and pray for. It's a feeling you can't describe to anybody unless they've just felt it.
Yeah, I don't know what the best part is, but like it happened all so fast after I got out of the Marine Corps that I don't know. You know, I was all the way done with the hottest part of my career before I even learned how to wrestle, you know, and especially the psychology of it all, the psychology of the television show and the writing of the show and the flow and you know what I mean? How do we, all of the construction of it. And I think that's what Scotty was talking about, the construction of the match, the construction of WrestleMania, the construction of a Tuesday or Friday Night SmackDown, the construction of that to get a certain response or pop or whatever. And when you see it come to pass, like it comes to fruition, it is a euphoria. But then, you know, I didn't start feeling all that really till I got sober, because it was just about, now it was just a party. You know what I mean?
Yep. So Scotty, from the territory days, you got your chance to debut in WCW when you were working as enhancement talent. I think it was around early 1990. What was it like to be a part of the company and going on the road with WCW?
Chance, it's what you look. If you worked anywhere, you wanted to work for WCW or for Vince, and to get that opportunity. And I knew I'd gotten the opportunity because of my dad and Brad at the time. And hey, I'll take whatever I can get. And man, did I love it. Oh gosh, it was to be in the locker room with those guys that I just watched on TV. Look, call me a mark. Okay, I'm a mark. I'm still a mark. I love it. I watch all the shows, and but at that time it was man, it was awesome. I had a really good time doing it.
From there, you got to head back to your roots to Smoky Mountain Wrestling, starting as yourself and eventually transitioning to Dixie Dynamite. What was your experience down there in Smoky Mountain?
Smoky Mountain was so much like Continental. It was again, salt of the earth wrestling fans that just loved it. and wanted to be taken on that ride and forget, the predetermination of it all. And it, it was just it was so fun to come in as Scott Armstrong, but then it was Jim Cornette was the one running Joe, and he came to me and said, "Hey, I have an idea, and it's kind of a kid's gimmick, but at the same time, your dad is going to be like our top guy as a commissioner." And he said, "And I want to eventually get to the story of your mask comes off and you're Bob Armstrong's son." And he said, "But I don't want to do that for at least a year." And I said, "Okay." Now honestly, I don't remember how long I was Dixie Dynamite, but it wasn't like Dixie Dynamite. It was Dixie Dynamite. He had a whole way to do it, and red mask, and I mean, it was a lot of fun because I ran to the ring with sparklers. It was a kid's gimmick, and plus it meant that I could go on first and then get in my car and get out of there before the show was up. And when you're driving those Smoky Mountain roads, I promise you want to get out early.
Dog, as Scott brings up that vibe, let me ask, long-term storytelling, how hard is it? You have the experience behind the scenes. How hard is it to really plan out that year-long angle turn and see it come to fruition, or does it just always change so much every 3 days after the plan was made?
Yeah, look, it's not impossible, but it's very difficult, and only because, look, you're doing a live show several nights a week with athletes that are putting their lives on the line and putting their limbs on the line. You know what I mean? And so things happen and things change and people leave so it's very hard to do, but it is possible. Especially if it's your company and you plan on having it a year, then you can kind of control that. But even then, something goes down, or Scotty goes down, you lose him for 2 months or 6 months if it's a knee or something. You know what I mean? Like it's very difficult to plan that out. Thank God I had help, because I'm a in the moment kind of guy. I can help you get out of this moment we're in right now, but I can't see the future. You know what I mean? And plot out that long. It was very difficult for me to do.
Scott, you brought up Jim Cornette. You got to have some great Cornette stories, right?
Yeah, there's a few. There's a few. Hey, look, I'm going to be honest with you. Jimmy's always a good dude to me. If he said you're going to do this, then it happened. If you're going to get X amount of dollars, I got it. I mean, he was never there. I mean, I did witness a few things where, back in the day, he'd eat like 2 Wendy's triple with cheese and bacon and large fries and a large Coke. And I'm talking every night after the show. I'll never forget one night pulling up behind him in a Wendy's, and I don't know what happened, but man, he cut a promo on that poor girl in the drive-thru. And I just thought, how does somebody not just try to pull his fat ass through the drive-thru? And then fast forward, I see him all these years later, and he's lost all his weight. I think he was about to die, because it looked like he was about to have a heart attack every 5 seconds. But he about a month before our dad passed away, he was at my house. My dad was at my house, and I snuck to the back and I called Jimmy, because Jimmy and my dad had a great relationship. They always did. And I knew Jimmy would appreciate it. And I called him and said, "Hey dude, my dad's here. I just want to put you on the phone with him for a minute, if you don't mind." And he said, "Oh no, yeah, let's do it." And so I just went, "Hey Dad, Jim Cornette just called me," and handed his phone, and they talked about 10 minutes. And I heard Jim on his podcast say it's the last time that he got to talk to my dad. And he gave me the shout out for giving him the call. But they had a real good relationship. Look, Jim Cornette is who he is. I mean, you either accept that or you don't. But if you know going in, it sure does make it a lot easier. I've heard a lot of people say a lot of things about him, and bullshitter extraordinaire. Okay, but hey, man, he treated me good, and I always tried to return that favor.
I rubbed him the wrong way when I met him back in my Nashville days of 2003. I thought it was disrespectful that I talked to him with my face paint on in the locker room. Who knows?
Well, Ryan,
Yeah, I'm hot. You don't have it on now.
Yeah. Ryan, you're so stupid.
Yeah. Sometimes I am.
No, Jim. No, the truth of it is, Jim. You say what you will about Jim. He did have a great relationship with our father. He was really good to my whole family. Continues to be. So you say what you want, but you react to people how they treat you. You know what I mean? And he's always treated us awesome. So can't say nothing but good things.
I've been in
about Jim.
situations in my life of the same thing where people don't like someone, but that person's been really good to me. And I
Yeah.
have nothing bad
Yeah.
to
And what are
say.
you supposed to do? You know what I mean? Oh, you don't want me to like him because you don't like him? Well, yeah, that's how it is today, actually.
Scott, you returned to WCW and you're working with the likes of Steven Regal, Diamond Dallas Page, the future Triple H, and Ron Simmons. How did you end up back in WCW in '94? How does this all come back together?
So Jody Hamilton was there, and he was getting the enhancement guys, and I called him. I'd known the original Assassins, and he had worked as the Flame in Continental really early in my career, and so I just called him and said, "Hey, Smoky Mountain had kind of died out, and it's kind of the fizzling out of the territory days of all those kinds of territories, and we're down to the big two." And so I just said, I said, "Hey, Joe, do you have anything?" And he said, "No, kid, I'm sorry. I really don't. There's nothing here." And I said, "No, could I just come up there and put somebody over?" And he said, "Oh, you don't want to do that." And at the time I had 2 kids and no job. And I said, "No, I'll do it." And he went, "Okay, well, I'll see you whenever they were doing TV on at that time." And it just so happened that Regal had just started, and man, him and Brad got along so good. And I know when I met him, it was like, look, I'm an extension of Brad, and Brian's an extension of us. You meet one of us, you know us all, and that's how it was with Regal. And we just became really good friends. And about that time, Terror Rising was getting his start, and they tagged them up together and against me and Brad, and we had a little run with those, the future Triple H. I mean, and that's literally how I met him, was there. And Ron Simmons, I'll never forget. I put Ron Simmons over on TV, and then the next day there was some live event or something, or a house show we went to, and they said, "Well, Ron didn't show up." I didn't see him again for about 5 years. And when I did see him, I said, "Ron, the last time I saw you were WCW, and you beat me on TV in like 4 minutes, and I hadn't seen you since." He said, "Scotty, that match was the shits, man. I ain't never wanted to see that match. I quit the business after that." Oh, I love that dude. He's a great guy.
I just saw him a couple weeks ago.
I did too at WrestleCon.
Oh yeah. That was awesome.
Yeah, he's a good dude. But anyway, yeah, it was. Look, when I went back, Ryan, I had a much bigger appreciation for being there, because I went back. Hey, I wasn't trying to get a job. I just needed a job, and things just fell into place. And it was like, holy mackerel. Next thing you know, Kevin Nash gets the book. And when he gets the book, he calls me and my brother Steve in and says, "You guys feel like you've paid your dues enough?" And we just started laughing. And Brad worked with him a lot when he first started, so he was really cool with our family. And he said, "Yeah, I'm going to give you guys contracts." And we just went, "Dude, thank you, man. That's really cool." And after that, we still knew our role, but it took a lot of the pressure off, because, look, without a contract, if you snap your leg,
Yeah.
you're just a dude with your leg snapped sitting at the house. You know what I mean?
Unemployed with a broken leg.
Right. And so, I was very fortunate to get to see Kevin Nash, I don't know, a year or so ago. Well, no, I guess it was pre-pandemic. I got off the plane and was going out to call an Uber, and there he was getting in this big, beautiful black limousine. And he goes, "Hey, you going to the TV hotel?" I said, "Yes." He goes, "Come on." Oh man. I said, "Dude, your timing is phenomenal." And I reminded him of that moment where he gave us those contracts. Just, oh yeah, no, I mean, to him, it was no big deal.
Yeah.
To us, it was everything at the time, man.
So you and Steve and you and Brad are teaming up during this time, and you team with Brad in a dark match against Arn Anderson and Bunkhouse Buck at Starrcade. Did you feel like your career was progressing and going where you wanted it to go?
Did that was that match was at the time was like the biggest, even though it was a dark match, it was like the biggest match in my career as far as
the house goes.
Well, the house and hey, these guys are on the Starrcade card, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, they're on top.
Yeah, and so Brad's name had been out there, but mine really had, and I didn't feel like it had. And so to be a part of it was huge. And to be a part of it, look, Bunkhouse Buck was Jimmy Golden here, and when we all broke in, we were with him. I mean, he was one of the heels down.
Yeah, we've all worked
in
with
Pensacola.
him.
And so we'd worked with him 100 times, and then Arn had been my roommate. And so
yeah, they grew up together.
Right. I mean, we got into it in our condo one time, and he threw me and my foot went through the wall. Well, it was my dad's condo. I mean, he bought it to resell it and make money on it. Right. And my foot went through it, and we immediately had to call one of our buddies, say, man, you know anybody that can plaster up this hole so that nothing happens to this? You know, we never told
that was
my
two
dad.
Two adult grown men.
Yeah.
That's the kind of respect my dad had.
But you also have those friends that call in those situations that have
that can hang drywall.
Yes. So, but you're right. But to go back to your question, yeah, it was huge. It was cool to get to do it with Arn. You know, there's an old thing about the business. You get in the ring with somebody that you really don't know, and you wrestle them, and you might not be as physical because you don't want to hurt somebody that you really don't know. But then you get in there with, like, I've wrestled Brian, and we beat the hell out of each other, and you just come back and laugh and go, "Oh my God, you asshole! You knocked the
yeah,
you know what I mean?
I got you with that one. I'm sorry."
Right.
Even in non-professional wrestling settings, I remember at amateur freestyle wrestling tournaments we would go to, if friends drew each other in the brackets, they used to just same thing. They'd hit each other with the biggest, hardest moves, throws, slams, and just put on an exhibition of pain, punishment, and entertainment for all those that are watching.
Yeah, and that's how it was. It was always that way with. It was always that way with Arn too. So it was because of our history. It was cool to be able to catch each other with a couple and laugh about it, you know, instead of get mad.
Well,
I got to work with Dad one time in Smoky Mountain, but I was a ninja and I was hidden under the ring, and Larry Santos was the other ninja. And so Larry worked with Dad, and I came out and ended up hitting Dad with like a chain or something and beat him. I think it was like a loser leave town or something. It was like a big deal. And I remember thinking like, oh God, I don't want to hit him hard. I don't want to.
Right. Yeah. Brian wrestled in Smoky Mountain with TV with a mask on as the Dark Secret. And the Dark Secret was, well, he's one of the Armstrongs, and there I was wrestling it.
That's another Jim Cornette idea. You know what I mean?
He said, I'm going to call you the Dark Secret.
The Dark Secret, and I wore Brad had the Bad Street when he was Bad Street with the Freebirds. Yep. I just turned that outfit inside out, and so it was all black. And so yeah, it was Smoky Mountain.
Dark Secret, man.
Yeah, it was a Dark Secret.
Yeah, while you're working various matches in WCW, Dogg over there is the roadie, which we'll be covering in a future episode here. But him and Jeff Jarrett walk out of WWF after a big angle on pay-per-view. What do you remember about this, and what were your feelings?
What are you doing? We literally said, what are you thinking? Oh my God, you blew it. You'll never be back. We just cast eternal damnation all over it. And, look, this business is fickle. Today, you never know what's going to happen tomorrow. So, but yeah, we were all very, oh my God, man. We just thought definitely a career suicide move. That's what we thought. We just didn't know.
And I thought, like, I didn't care at all. Like I didn't. At the time, I just didn't care. I thought it would last forever. I got a taste of it, and you know what I mean. And it was like, yeah, I quit. How are they going to go on without me? Oh, they're just taping another television show. Like that's how they do it.
But it wasn't career suicide. So, Scott, when you saw Dogg and the New Age Outlaws start to get hot, were you surprised that it was able to turn around all the way?
So I always go back to what JJ said to him when he got hired. You know, we can change it in 30 seconds. I always went back to that. I thought about that the rest of my career because that's a brilliant, I mean, it's a good way to look at it. It really is. Definitely what I remember is, you know, Larry Zbyszko, I think it was, it said something on TV about, oh yeah, Abdullah cursed Bob Armstrong and now his boys are cursed. I mean, we'd get beat every week on TV. And
Yeah,
and
but we had
you
good
know,
matches.
we had great pride in our work because we were able to work with, you know, Arn and Flair or, you know, Triple H and Regal or, you know, whoever, and have really good matches, but we just wouldn't win. And so,
Yeah, and the great part about that is somebody has to lose. Like it's not
we were,
it's not
yeah, we
real.
were, look, right. To us, well, look, this is the way I've always looked at it. If it was real, I'd be the guy that you go, yeah, can I get 2 popcorns? Yeah, here you go, buddy. That'd have been me. And
Yeah.
so I mean, look, I'm not the toughest guy in the world, I promise you. But to be able, for Larry Zbyszko to say, oh yeah, it's an Armstrong curse. Well, then every week on TV, he would say, oh, it's the Armstrong curse. There it is. To then fast forward and see Brian come out on his entrance with a shirt airbrush that said, look, Mom, no curse. It's like,
I was breaking the forbidden wall way back then.
right. Yes. And look, Ryan, you know the deal. When that live TV show, you know, where those Monday Night Wars, right? And so Monday night, they're watching Raw. We're at Nitro, and they have a monitor over here that's watching Raw. And you go to Raw, they got a monitor over here watching it. And there we are watching my brother walk down the look on the curve.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was.
God.
It's you know, it's definitely all about wanting everybody to succeed and wanting being proud of who we are and you conduct business. Like I'll never forget. I told Dad one time they want me to do a job, and he said, "Do a job? You got a job, don't you?"
Right.
And it made me just think different. Like, oh, he's right, man. This is all a big act, and you play your role. And if you get caught up in I don't know, man. I don't know. That ain't me. I was never the guy. That's why I wasn't a top guy because that ain't me. I don't think like that. I don't play like that.
No, me either.
Okay, so Scott, you were at WCW. Things are heating up. All of this is going on. Monday Night Wars are in full effect. Was there a moment when you knew the WWF was going to overtake WCW and take back the throne?
Yes. So I was about 4 months from the end of my contract, and Terry Taylor had come in as the booker, head writer, whatever you want to call it, back in those days. And Terry literally called me at home and said, Scott, we want to pay you out of your contract, or we can send you your check every 2 weeks, or you can keep coming for the next 4 months and just getting beat on TV. But if you want to go home and try to get your body, you know, or to change or something to go talk to Vince, then, you know, you can go home and we'll pay you for the next 4 months. And I went, yeah, don't pay me one check. Just keep my check coming every 2 weeks. Cause look, anybody that knows an old wrestler, don't give me a chunk of money.
Yeah.
Please don't. And so, so I came home and I started working out and really I bleached my hair as white. I mean, cotton top. I did everything I could do to try to change my look. And literally 3 months and 3 weeks go by. The last check is coming and Nitro's just going off the air. And I get a phone call from Nick Patrick and he said, hey man, they're looking for referees and your name came up. Would you be interested? Well, any wrestler will tell you, as soon as you make the commitment to be a referee, you're never looked at the same again as far as being a wrestler. And, you know, I just thought, I'm about to be 40 and blah, blah, blah. So I called he said, just call Terry. Think about it tonight. Call Terry tomorrow. So I called Terry and he said, yeah, sure, man. And I started at like, I don't know, Halloween Havoc. I mean, as a referee and never reffed a match, you know, I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. And so,
none of us
I
do.
mean, right. And so, I reffed a match and Nick Patrick helped me so much. But to get to your question, we get to Knoxville, Tennessee, and it was the exact same day that, oh gosh, what was the race car driver that got killed in the wreck? His son ended up being a big star.
Dale Earnhardt.
Dale Earnhardt. Yeah. Yeah. Because everybody's talking about it in the locker room. We had an afternoon show and everybody's talking about the locker room. And the very next thing was, hey guys, in 3 weeks, this is done. And everybody went, wait, what? They said, yeah, in 3 weeks, WCW will be no more. And then the very last show, you know, it was Panama City. Well, that's 90-mile drive from my house. So I drove to Panama City and came these famous words in the wrestling business. Shane McMahon had a meeting with everybody and he said, look, 60 dudes in there, Booker T. I mean, so many of us. And he said, look, nobody has anything to worry about. You're all going to be good and taken care of. Well, I'd been in the business long enough to know that is the kiss of death. and I literally remember coming home and telling my wife, I'm done. And I was 40. And she said, oh, no. Well, if he said that. And I just said, no, maybe you don't know this business like I do. I'm done. And I think they took, 3 refs. We had like 6 or 7, and I think they took 3. And I was not one of them. And so about 5 years later, though, Umaga walks in and says, I was working at a furniture store. I was the manager. And he walks in and says, oh, no, man, there's no Armstrong ever supposed to be selling furniture. You're supposed to be in the wrestling business. So, no, dude, I'm home every night. I'm doing homework with the kids, having dinner. And he said, yeah, I'm not buying any of that. And about 3 weeks later, he walked back in and said, here's John Laurinaitis' phone number. He said, call him. I said, dude, man. And here we are. That was 2006 when he walked into the furniture store.
You meet some great people in this business. You meet some snakes in the grass too, but the good outweigh the bad.
Oh man, I owe him everything. Bless his heart. God rest his soul.
Wow. I mean, I was going to try to make a clever transition into something when we were talking about the heavier stuff and be like a stiff shot of reality. And speaking of,
sorry, dude.
But
yeah, you ruined it with your good feeling story.
Yeah. I like long walks on the beach.
Yeah.
Talking of long walks and making things long, let's talk about BLUECHEW when we return and break into your transition to the next phase of your career as a ref. Stiff and strong, 2 styles of wrestling in 2 words you want to represent you in the bedroom, and that's where BLUECHEW comes in. BLUECHEW is a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but in chewable tablets and at a fraction of the cost. You can take them anytime.
There's the music.
We're in the mood now, yeah. You can take them anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be
Take them anytime.
When opportunity arises.
Arises, he said.
The process is simple. Sign up at BLUECHEW.com. Consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days.
A discreet package, but nothing will be discreet about your package.
It's all done online with no doctor's office, no awkward conversations, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. It's time to get off the couch and back to work, because if your tool needs an upgrade, head to BLUECHEW.com. If you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, Blue Chew can help. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code DOGG at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, promo code DOGG to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast.
Thank you, Blue Chew.
You talked earlier about the workout, discipline in your house. And we saw the physiques of you and your brothers. So Dogg, what was the difference?
What are you saying? Where's this conversation going?
You may be strong, but they're a little bit more defined.
Okay, so this is fat shaming. This is about you fat shaming me right now.
I gotta
no. It was truth be told, it was for all three of my brothers and my father, and still is for I think everybody, for you and Stevie anyway, Scotty. A part of y'all's like you work out. That's part of your deal. It wasn't a part of mine. You know what I mean? Like it was. I went in the military and we did a lot of running and stuff like that, and I. Back in the day, I used to work out a little, but it just never became like a part of my life. And Ryan, that's why I'm fat.
I get it. I'm struggling, man. It's been like 8 years since
That's why my cholesterol is high. That's why I have hypertension. Those are going to be our next sponsors is Lipitor.
All right, we're back with Scott Armstrong, big brother to the Road Dogg, and it's time to get into your transition from wrestler to referee. How did it all happen? You kind of were talking about it before the break, so let's elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah. So look, after I made that phone call to John Laurinaitis, per Umaga, Eki, I made that phone call and he said, we want to bring in for a tryout. And I said, oh man, I'd met Johnny 1991 on a long Japan tour. And so, can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Your gimmicks just tapped. But so I'd known Johnny for a long time. And so that was 91. We were in Japan, but so 2006. And he said, yeah, bring you in for a tryout as a ref. And I said, yeah, I just need to know I got a job because I'm quitting a job. And he said, okay, well, come on. And, I didn't know at that time they could just.
Okay, then.
Right.
You're hired.
So, but I came in and I did the ECW 2.0 or ECW Light or whatever the WWE version.
WECW.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I did that for about 6 months. And then, and the day everything changed, there was at that time we were branded referees. So there may be 7 matches on the card, but there would be, 3 Raw matches and 3 SmackDown matches and 1 ECW match. And it'd be like the third match of the night or second match of the night. And so, so I just would fly to the town, do 1 match and I was done. And so one of the SmackDown referees didn't make it. And so they said, hey, Scott, can you ref the girls? Well, it was Natalia against Victoria. Lisa, you know who I'm talking about, right?
Yep.
And so I said, okay. And so I didn't realize that they were, kind of rookies. And so we get into the match and they were just, they were just in a hold. And Natty was, I don't know, just green. And I just looked at her, pointed at her and said, look at me. I said, shake your finger just like this and point at me. And, the fans don't know what I'm doing. They just, the referee and they're doing that. And she started doing it and the people started getting louder. And I looked at her and I said, do you hear that?
It's funny how that works.
And I said, let's go to work. And they started coming up and I looked at Victoria because it was like they didn't have anything to go into. And I said, what if I just walk around in front of you and you pull her tights back down? And she literally went, okay. And I walked around. She pulled her tights down. The people, boo, boo. I just looked at them and I said, hey, Natty, let's do the finger thing one more time. She started doing it, started coming up. So literally we get to TV and one of the refs goes, hey, Laurinaitis wants to see you in his office. Well, I'm already thinking, man, I just quit that job and now he's going to
Immediately.
in my mind, I was already doomed. And I walked in his office and there sat Victoria and Natty. And I said, hey, ladies. And he said, the girls said that you were the referee and that you helped them out a lot. And I just said, oh, yeah, we had fun. I didn't know exactly what they were talking about. I knew done a couple of things in the match, and he said, okay, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. Scott, stay here with me. Man, he doubled my money and made me a SmackDown referee right then and there. And I started into the whole referee gimmick and, very fortunate to be able to do some, Mania main event stuff with Triple H and just, I literally, when people ask me, hey man, I think of Umaga and Natty and Victoria without, look, I'm a believer. And so I believe God puts people in your path that he wants in your path. And I can't, when I think of Umaga and sorry to get all real again, but Umaga and those two girls, holy mackerel, man. I tell people that those two girls changed my wife was already saying, hey, so I think you're making about as much money at the furniture store as you are refereeing with ECW. And I said, no, look, furniture store's okay, but I love wrestling.
Yeah.
I didn't care if it didn't pay anything. I would have done it. I mean, I love it. I still do. And so, although now I'm not going to do it for that. And so anyway, I owe those girls. Every time I see them, I always tell them, thank you so much for everything.
I was with Victoria, Scotty, in Liverpool, and she's talked all about you and said, "Oh, please tell him hello." And so it was very cool.
Changed my family's, my kids and everything. Changed our life.
Yeah,
really did.
Wonderful moments. We'll continue talking about your time in WWE in a little bit as we close the episode, but I want to jump over to TNA and your time working there. How did that come about? Was that just based on your relationship with Jeff Jarrett, or
it was based on Brian's relationship with yeah, Jeff called me, but it was him and Brian were boys, and he just called and said, hey, look, we need some referees, and I want you to come and be the main ref, and I want you to sit in on the production meetings. And I said, yeah, sure, man. I'll be glad to. And so I think, how long was that, Brian? About a year, probably.
Yeah, that we drove to Nashville every week.
Yeah, 8-hour drive there.
Percy Pringle made a couple of those drives with us. We talked about the other day.
Did you have some lunch at the White Trash Cafe?
We sure did. We sure did.
Yes, we did. And that's some good food too.
Yeah. Yes, it was.
Right in.
How cool was it to be back working with your family again? You had Brian, you had your dad there. Was it neat to be have the boys back together in that sense?
For me, I love traveling with my, and telling stories and just lying and laughing. That, family, right? I mean, it's funny because throughout this business, I've had many wrestlers say, yeah, I don't get along with my brothers at all. Or I don't get along with my sister or yeah, I don't know my parents. And I always say, well, the wrestling business, you can just look like Regal. I'm like this with Regal. But then you add an actual family member that's in the wrestling business and you just become, it's crazy how it is. But you think about the boys or the girls or whatever, and they just become really good friends. And, at the same time, we like, hey, I got to move. I need help. And all the other wrestlers go, yeah, I can't help you. Well, your brothers, they can tell you no, but they're going to.
They got to help.
Yes.
What was your time in TNA like?
So Rudy Charles was one of the referees that they hired at the time, and
Dan Angler now. Yep.
Dan Engler, right? Dangerous Dan. And so, and I think he's now with WWE, right? Isn't he still with them?
Yes.
And so, he came in and Jeff said, "Hey, this kid doesn't know anything, but he's local. We're going to use him. So can you teach him?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And
he also
man,
did a lot of administrative stuff for Jeff. Like he was good.
yes.
So Jeff wanted, look, if we got something in house, let's utilize our resources, as conservatively as possible.
And Rudy's career, or Dan Engler, his career just kept going and going and going. And then, had been in WWE for a while, and I had the opportunity to finally say, "Hey, this guy's really good." And so they gave him a chance, and now he's there. But the whole TNA, look, we drive up there 8 hours and do the show and drive 8 hours. Well, we drive the night before, right, Brian? We
Yeah. And then get there and it was a trek, but it was us. It was me and Scotty and Dad and maybe, like I said, Percy made a couple of trips with us, but not that many. It was kind of just us. You know what I mean?
Our dad was a friggin' NASCAR race driver. I'm telling you, he was behind the wheel, and I'll never forget one time we're going through Birmingham, or towards Birmingham, I think, and there's like 3 lanes, and all of a sudden there's the sign that says merge left into the fast lane. And I'm going, "Hey, Dad, hey, Dad, hey, Dad." And I'm getting a little bit later, and Percy's in the back seat, and I'm going, Dad, because that lane's running out, and there are cars everywhere. And all of a sudden he just threads the needle, and I'm going, Dad, and I'm back against the thing, and Percy is laughing hysterically. And after that, every time I saw him, he'd go, "Oh, Dad, oh, Dad, oh, Dad."
Oh, he was a good man too.
He was. But
TNA was fun. It was just going up there and doing the dang thing,
Kurt Hennig came in there for a while, and we never got to like in WCW, we were around him a lot, but no, like when he was TNA.
I'd never met Kurt before TNA.
Oh,
but like the first time I met him, it was like I'd known him forever, because he was just like one of the boys. You know what I mean? It was just like one of the James boys. Yeah. So just that Wisconsin redneck kind of.
Yes,
always one of my favorites.
Yeah, one of my favorite wrestlers.
TNA, his first day in, and he came in, and literally we heard him downstairs going, "Where are the Armstrongs dressing?" Because we would dress in, like, we try to find a corner, a cubby hole, and just that was the Armstrong.
Put our stuff we'd hide over in the corner.
Right. And here he come up the steps. He goes, "There they are."
Yeah, he sat right with us, and he fit right in.
His son, same way.
Same way, yeah.
Yes, good people.
Why did it end in TNA?
Power change.
Yeah, the truth be told, the day that we quit, so I guess I was still in active addiction at the time, and so I was supposed to beat the guy, or I was supposed to wrestle the guy that like came in second on Tough Enough, and the guy was going to beat me, and I guess they were going to run with the guy or something, and at that time I wasn't thinking about, oh well, the company needs me to do this because they're going to give this guy a shove. I just told him no, and that was the first time I think I ever said, yeah, I don't think that's what I'm going to do. And truth be told, I think my active addiction had more to do with it than the creative decisions. But I just thought, I'm going to get in the car, and I'm going to drive back to Pensacola, and I'm going to take everything I got and smoke everything I got and do it. You know what I mean? And I'm going to do things my way, by God. And here I am again, unemployed.
Yeah, I remember.
I'm a genius when it comes to business strategy.
I remember saying, "Well, Brian, let's at least, we got to tell Jerry, Jeff Jarrett's dad, Jerry Jarrett, and Jerry Jarrett's a good dude, and he was always another guy, always good, and I said, we owe it to him, to just go get in the car and drive back." And Brian said, "Okay, you crank the car. It was cold. I said, if you crank the car and get it warm, I'll be right back. I'll tell it. I remember I sat in the car for like 15 minutes and I walked back in and I looked through the curtain and there's Brian and Jerry sitting like on the first row of the empty building. And I see Brian stand up and start walking. So I just went back, got in the car and he goes, okay, let's go.
Yeah,
Hey,
just like I did with his son years before. You know what I mean? It was just like, oh, this dumbass will just walk out. He don't care.
I should have known.
Yeah.
All right, we got one more phase of this WWE run to talk about, and I think we can get into it when we come back from this little break with words from our sponsor.
Psst. Who's going to take care of your family if something happens to you? What would they do without your income? If you don't have a plan, you need to go to GoliathLife.com. Get a quick quote for more than 20 carriers. You don't even have to leave the house. If you need a medical exam, they'll send somebody to your house or office. You're in total control. You pick the rates, you pick the payments, you pick the terms. You're in total control, but it gives you and your family peace of mind. What if something happens to your income? Hurry to GoliathLife.com.
We're back, and Scott, you refereed a lot of big matches in your time in WWE. Do you have any that stick out as your favorites?
Oh, well, yes, definitely. I can tell you my very favorite. It was the Undertaker's Rest in Peace tour. It was his very last tour of the UK. And he was working main event every night against Big Show. And I was reffing the match, and we were in the London's O2 Arena. So, listen, that Rest in Peace tour, in my career, I'd never been on sellout after sellout after sellout, and every town sold out, every one of them. And so, but this one stood out because that O2 Arena, that's the arena that Michael Jackson had, 50 concerts in a row booked. At the time when he passed, he had those 50 dates, and the acoustics in that arena, I don't know why, it's just one of my favorite arenas anyway. And so, I remember I'm standing in the ring, Big Show comes out, they know he's working Undertaker, huge boos, just giving him the business, and he gets in the ring, and I'm standing in one corner, and he's away from me. And all of a sudden, those lights go out, and you hear that first gong.
Gong.
That building, it was deaf, and I'm not kidding you, it was deafening. And because the ring, sits in the center of all those people, of course, and all of a sudden, Big Show had, in that pitch black darkness, had walked all the way over to, and he literally yelled in my ear and said, "This is awesome." And he was right. I was feeling the same thing.
It's that palpable. I always say that because I learned what it meant, but I always say that because also it's like, that's an energy that you literally can feel through your body. And I've stood in the middle of that ring and had his music hit before. And it's something to behold,
the crowd literally, I mean, each night they got great reactions, but something about the vibe that night, I've never forgotten. I mean, ever. I mean, that match, and then the other match that I think about my wrestling career being the top thing was me and my brother Steve versus Dory and Terry Funk. And we had our dad in our corner, and they had Jim Cornette in their corner. And, Dory and Terry, two dudes that I literally idolized growing up. I mean, brothers, like me and my brothers, and their dad was a wrestler like my dad. I mean, man, they were, and I had no clue how stiff they were.
Oh, I don't know when that was, but I could have told you about Terry.
Yes. It's just a headlock you wanted to tap out. But yeah, that match, to Arena with those two dudes, I'll never forget it. I mean, I'll tell that story more than just today.
And it's more than just about the match itself. You know what I mean? It's about the moment. It's about that moment is special. And I'm sure they didn't have a 5-star match. You know what I mean? As far as Uncle Dave's concerned, but that moment to be there and be present for that is a special, special thing.
Yeah, it was awesome to me for sure.
Scott, what happened with your first release from the company in 2010?
I was just an idiot. I was just an idiot, running my mouth and acting a fool. And it's like Brian said, you think, oh, at the time I'm the best ref in the history of the business. There's no way they can get rid of me. Have a good referee, and the show still went on, and every referee there was, I'm sure, glad I was gone. I'd just become a nuisance, and you know, you got to grow up. And I didn't get hired there until I was 45 years old. And you don't hire anybody at 45 to put in front of the camera. You hire that guy to be behind the camera. And I just had run my course, and had to sit at home for a little while and realize, well, maybe I need to figure this out. And I don't know, about 10 and a half months later, I get a phone call. Hey, would you be interested? Your name's come back up. And I said, yeah. And buddy, when they brought me back, I started at the very bottom of the pay scale and had to prove myself like I was a rookie, first time ever being in the business. And I did. I kept my mouth shut, and I did the very best I could. And it just started going forward. And after, I don't know, a couple of years, I guess, I put my name out there and said, hey, I'd be interested in producing too, if that's available anytime. And it was probably 2 years after that when I was approached and said, hey, look, I'd like for you to start sitting in on production meetings. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and write you off the TV show. And, referees didn't get written off of the TV show. Referees don't get written about at all. Referees don't sell tickets. They just give them away.
Yeah, but you had been involved in some stuff with the corporation, or whatever, what were they called?
Yeah, you had a semi-heel run working for the Authority.
The Authority, yeah.
And then a heel spot moment at WrestleMania 30's main event between Daniel Bryan, Batista, and Randy Orton. Was that probably the biggest moment of your career, just based on sheer size of that arena?
Yeah, and viewership too. You know what I mean? I mean, that was a huge, huge spot. And I remember I was literally, I had my referee shirt on and just a black t-shirt on. And I walked up and just kind of sat down on the second row. And they had put a chair out there, and nobody was paying attention. You just think somebody's going to go, well, hey, here's the referee, because I'd been on TV doing the angle, with those guys and stuff. And not one person, they were just into the match. I mean, into it. And all of a sudden I saw my spot come, and then I heard Hunter look at Steph and go, where's Scott? And I took the shirt off, leave the barrier, and there he is. And yeah, man, it was really cool. It was really cool. My wife and kids were there, and it was just a cool moment.
Yeah, it was a very cool moment for Daniel Bryan, for dang sure.
Having had the chance to do it all, to be a referee, to be a producer, to be a wrestler, is there anything that you preferred more? Which one leads?
Oh, without a doubt, refereeing was so much fun. Now, that could be because I had wrestled for 22 years prior. You know what I mean? The ring's my home. You know what I mean? It just is. I've done this business 38 years since my first match. And so, the ring's just the office. You go clock in when you climb through those ropes, and you get comfortable there. And as a referee, if you really think about it, people go, oh, that referee did so-and-so. Well, I promise you, when they say that, that's the only time the entire match they looked at the referee. Nobody looks at the ref. They just don't. And so I was able to really relax. And, look, if I see somebody so gassed on the ground and they're selling it, but you look at them and you see, my God, he may throw up right here. I could step in and go, hey man, look at me, take a breath, breathe. And when you see somebody relax the muscles in their face, and then they go on and have
it sounds psychotic that you would have to tell somebody to breathe during life, you know what I mean? But the truth of it is, you get hung up on the adrenaline and on the nerves, and it helps for. I know I was on either in a rear chin lock or had a rear chin lock on one of the Usos somewhere. And Scotty, you were all right. May have been
It
somebody
was
else.
you. No, it was me. It was in the UK. You and Billy. It was your last loop with Billy.
I was so blown up, and he would just say, "Hey, just look at me, breathe, just breathe," and it just helps to go. Brings me back down to earth for a second, and the reality, like if I don't breathe, I'm gonna die here. So, and then you can just sit there for a minute and catch your breath. But yeah, that was so important to me, and it sounds crazy, but it's.
And
Man,
Ronnie,
a referee, the third man in the ring, or the fifth man in a tag team situation, or let's go down the line, or the 11th man in a 10-man tag. But so important, man. I read somebody posted this the other day on Twitter, and it was like, be sure and thank your refs. It might have been Cody Deaner, to be quite honest. So be sure and thank your refs, because man, a good one can make a match great, and a bad one can make a great match the crap. You know what I mean? So yeah, always thank your referee.
for me, selfishly, refereeing, I got to work. If we did a live event and we only had 2 refs, I'd get to do 3 or 4 matches.
Right.
So I got to work with almost everybody. But when you wrestle, you only work with 1 guy. Or if you're in a tag, 2 guys in your partner. So that always enjoyed working with everybody.
So
And,
talking about working with everybody, who were your favorite people to work with as a referee?
oh gosh, I've never been asked that question.
An exclusive on
You look so much like Dad right now.
Or was just
Oh,
big as hell.
well, they're bigger than mine. I can tell you that much.
Gosh, man, I mean, look, I'm just going to sound like, oh, he's kissing. But I always enjoyed working with Hunter because he always had good matches, and I always enjoyed being part of a good match. I'll tell you a match that I really enjoyed. When I started with ECW, CM Punk wrestled. Do you remember Mike Knox?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They wrestled each other about 20 minutes, like in Schenectady, or some town that they don't even go to. But ECW was going to it, and those things went about 20 minutes. And one of the best mat wrestling. Oh man, I told Punk, I said, dude, you missed your calling. He should have been in the 80s, because that was what they were doing right then. He should have been with me. And another one, Matt Hardy against Ali. What's his name? Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Mustafa Ali.
We're in a live event, and I said, hey, I was one of the producers. They went out there and just tore. They were on like second and just tore the house down. They came back, and I said, guys, I don't know that can be followed. It was like that. It was that.
Yeah, I would always hate to
remember-
be. If I was next, I would have yelled at him.
Yeah.
When you go out there and get over, what the crap? Now I got to follow that.
But here I am all this time later, and I vividly remember those 2 matches for sure.
Scotty,
because-
let me ask a question, if you don't mind. I don't think I've ever asked you this. Have you ever? So did you sit in when they were putting the matches together a lot?
Not really with ECW. I just would say, what's the finish?
Yeah,
You know
I
what
guess I mean when you started putting. You know what I mean? When you started going on SmackDown and you started doing some of these pay-per-views.
for live events.
Yeah.
No.
So did you ever have any input on any matches that you were just kind of listening to, I guess?
The person that asked me the most would be like Vince, like for TVs or something.
Yeah.
He would ask me, well, what do you think about that? Or what would you do right there? What would you, and I always felt that always made me feel good. Like,
Yeah.
hey man, you know what I mean?
He's asking.
Yeah. And Hunter did that a lot too. But like, as a referee, I didn't want to get in any, I knew they knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
Dude, all I got, look, you cover the guy, I'm going to count.
Yeah. Yeah. So also a reason that I think you probably liked Hunter's matches was And look, this is just how it is. He had a little leeway, and he could use some bells and whistles, and
Yeah.
sometimes that included a ref bump or
Yep.
something. So there was always something cool you could sink your teeth into, when you
And
had a match with
pace.
him.
His pace was good too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
His pace always, it flowed, and it always felt good to me anyway. I didn't blow
Well, it
up.
was like Harley Race, but like
Yes.
a little more up tempo than that. But that's who he was
Yeah.
methodical like that.
Yes, very much. Very
Having
much.
a lifetime of experience in the business and as a fan of the business, you got to be a part of Sting's first appearance in WWE. Was that exciting for you?
It was cool to see him. It really was, because I'd seen him in our youth. You know what I mean? We WCW, and he and Brad were really tight, and so it was cool of him for him to be there, because now we were older. You know what I mean? I think we're close to the same age. I think we are, but anyway,
Yep, he's
um,
104 too.
it's just hey, look, man, it's like Tom Brady. I pull for the old guys now.
Yeah,
I want
yeah.
them all do good. But yeah, he was another dude that was always good to me. I remember in '91 when I was in Japan, he was the one that told me they had just started Brad doing the Arachnaman, with like Spider-Man, but it was gold and purple, and he threw out streamers that looked like a web and all that stuff. And so he was the one. We're in a gym working out, and we're on tour, and all of a sudden in walks the Steiners and Sting. We said, "Hey, what are you guys doing here?" And Sting goes, "Hey, did you talk to your brother?" And I said, "No, I've been over here about 2 weeks." He said, "Yeah, they've already got a cease and desist from Marvel. he can't do the Spider-Man gimmick anymore." I said, "Oh," I knew he was brokenhearted. Brad had 10 gimmicks,
Yeah.
and he made them all work, but something like
That's why
that.
they kept trying to put him on him, because he was so good. It was just like, we can't. It's a dang shame to not have him on television in some way,
Right.
shape, or form.
Yes.
All right, Scott, I'd be doing our listeners a disservice if I didn't ask. You spent 15 years with WWE until your release earlier this year. What are your thoughts on what happened?
Oh, look, corporate downsizing, I get it. It's a multi-billion-dollar W. I totally get it. And at the end of the day, um, in every lifetime, they find a guy that's 30 that'll do it for a quarter of the money. And they realize, oh, hey, you know what? You had your run. Thanks for coming. Hey, look, I have nothing but thank you for everything. It changed my looking for somebody that just loves the business like I do. Me and my wife I got injured early in my career, and me and my new wife sold tickets. I was a ring announcer for Continental for a little while. I mean, the guy on TV with the tie going, "Oh, welcome to Boutwell Auditorium." I was that guy. I wrestled. I refereed. I was a producer. Uh, I was able to do everything in this business that I could ever want to do. At the same time, 35 years later, still married to the same woman, um, put two kids through college, got an awesome 4-year-old grandson that plays T-ball and hit the ball the other day and ran straight to the pitcher's mound.
And and honestly, that's better than any friggin' WrestleMania moment
Well,
you could imagine.
without a doubt. I mean, so to the business, I just say thank you. I mean,
Amen.
man, I can't say it. Look, the ups and the downs, that's just life. You're
Yeah,
gonna have that.
that's if you work at any company.
Anything, 7-Eleven, work tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Life hits you hard sometimes, and it hands you, roses sometimes. And look, man, it was at least I got to do it when I was young and really enjoy it. I got to ride camels at the foot of the friggin' Egyptian pyramids, man. I mean, I got me and R-Truth
Thanks
sitting.
to WWE, you know what I mean?
Right. Yes, thanks to wrestling. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, the places I've been and the things I've done, man, I can't say anything but thank you, and I'm totally grateful.
Yeah,
It's
amen.
it's been the ride of a lifetime. And I started back doing the indies. I refereed this last week, and I'll be refereeing by the time this airs. I'm a referee all the time.
Are you
But
gonna super kick anybody?
no, I can't get my leg no higher than about a foot right now.
You're going to give him the sweet shin music. Shin, I said.
Yes.
Shinomaki.
I had to take class on how to count to 3.
Having had the chance
Yeah.
to do everything, let's go into this last question and talk about one more thing you got to do, and that was induct your father into the WWE Hall of Fame. Had to be a tremendous honor for both of you.
Oh, dude, I literally was sitting at home and the phone rings and it was John Laurinaitis. And he said, hey, and WrestleMania was coming to Atlanta. And that's where my dad's career started and flourished. And, Brad really became a star there too, because he got on that TV when it went, cable huge. And so, John Laurinaitis called me and said, hey, I'm about to call your dad and put him in the Hall of Fame. And I went, oh, I mean, man, look, in my dad's Hall of Fame speech, he said, I just want to say thank you for letting this old war horse do his thing. And I thought, man, anybody that's ever seen that movie, War Horse, that's what you do. Just work hard as you can. And then they just put you, then you're just done. And you just go,
yeah, everyone gets put out to pasture.
right.
That's the truth.
And when you think about that, his career spanned 50 plus years, and you think about how could you do what we do or have done with your body and still be able to walk upright? And people can't imagine that. They go, oh yeah, that's all this and that's all. Well, whatever. I mean,
yeah.
you say
Tell
what
my
you
knees and my
do,
lower
and
back that.
I'll say, hey, you're welcome to your opinion. But I'll never forget in my early 20s I broke some. I was at the doctor, and the doctor looked at me and he knew who I was. He knew our family. And he said, I just have to tell you, the human body is not supposed to do what you and your family do. You know that, right? And, I'm in my 20s. Hey, dude, shut up. And give me
shut up and give me some pills.
Right. And so it was very, but I never forgot that moment either, because he's right. How can you tell somebody, oh yeah, I drove 5 hours and then, wrestled 15 minutes and I took,
then I ran as fast as I could and got knocked down. And then I stood up and hit another man. And then that man hit me back. And
I
like, that's not what
then I got
you
back
do.
in the car.
Yeah, I drove for 5 more hours.
Right.
Yeah, that's not what people at AT&T do. You know what I mean? So fake as you want to be, but you're still falling and getting hurt,
And so to be able to stand on that stage and look out at that crowd and see him standing there, and I'm there with my brothers and hear him do his speech and think, man, hey, for my mom too, they should have given her a ring, because she raised, 5 wrestlers, basically, 4 sons and him. And
she had 5 boys.
And the one thing about Ryan, and I'm sure the listeners know, or viewers too, wrestling has been my mistress. You know what I mean? And my wife has allowed me to have that mistress, because look, we've had ups and downs financially, in the wrestling business, and you do the indies. Back in the day, I did the indies, and you drive and then get duped on your money. And look, it's just part of the business. It just is. And so, the love of the game, at the end of it, that's what it is. It's the love of the game. And to see him stand up there and get that was like, that's an amazing, and to do it with family and our mom in the audience and let her be a part of that moment, man, I'll never forget it. As a matter of fact, I have a shelf in my living room that has his Hall of Fame plaque, and his Hall of Fame ring is in an engraved box that my son just said, hey, I got granddad something. And what is it? And he showed me, and I went, oh, dude, he's going to love. And then Brian and
then I said, hey, where'd you get that at? And I ended up getting one that says Road Dogg that holds my Hall of Fame ring. Yeah. So for me, look, I've said this before and I'll say it again. That was the most real moment for me that I ever had in the wrestling industry. Like I had a lot of really cool things go down and be a part of and all that. But like that was that was the time where a bunch of people said, hey, who could we say was really good at this stuff, and who is, you know, would pop a crowd in Atlanta, and who would whatever, and somebody came up with Bob Armstrong, and that's real. You can't, you know what I mean? His career stands for itself, and that was somebody really decided to do that, and me and Scotty and Brad, and I wish Stevie would have been there too, but we got to announce him into the Hall of Fame, man. It was the coolest moment to me in wrestling ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Bullet.
Yeah, it was cool to see him get acknowledged for what his life of work.
Yeah, for all his sacrifice, for our sacrifice of,
Right.
you know, and now for our children and grandchildren's sacrifice, because we're gone all the time. You know what I mean? So it's
Bullet Bob, Brad, Scott, Steve, Brian. Do you think we'll see the Armstrong family inducted as a family at some point based on your contributions to the history of this business?
I'd like to step on that, because I've said it before, and I want to kind of clarify. Look, I don't think we ever will, because I don't think the wrestling, not the fans. I don't mean the fans. I mean the wrestling powers that be doesn't look at our family like that. I really believe that with all my heart. And I just think they overlook us. I don't think we get the credit we get. And again, that's not from the fans. The fans in the Southeast will fight you over some Bob Armstrong stuff. So I just feel like, look, I don't feel like me and Billy will get it either. I feel like it's definitely, you know, on our own. It's definitely some politics go involved in it, and I just don't know that our family's going to get brought up in that conversation. I think we should. I just don't think we will, and I wanted to clarify that I didn't say that the fans don't appreciate us. I just feel like the powers that be in the world of wrestling today may not.
Hey, screw Brian, I want a ring.
I'd like another one as well. I'm just saying, I just don't know, you know, that's all.
No,
I don't know if you feel differently.
I totally get what you're saying for sure. I still want the ring.
You can wear mine.
Scott, this has been a ton of fun, informative, entertaining, just listening to you talk about it and seeing your energy and seeing your passion and your smile talking about these things. It's just infectious and fun to be a part of, man.
I appreciate it, Ryan. It's good to see you again, man. I'm sorry we parted ways the way it all, but hey, I didn't feel so bad since there was 15 of us.
Yeah. And that's what I said earlier. Is like, I'm not retired. I'm unemployed.
Right. Dog, and there we have another week. And I got to say, this one was pretty good, man.
It was really fun. I don't know how long we've been, but it feels like it feels like we just started, to tell you the truth. But look, I appreciate you coming on, Scotty. I love you. I always have, and I always will. I look up to you. I respect you, because you always had a business acumen about you, like I feel like Jeff has, and Hunter always kind of had. I didn't have that. I was just party and have fun and blah, blah, blah. And so I'm coming late to the game, but thanks for coming on and talking about your career. And it just gives me a different perspective too. 'Cause you know, I don't think we sit down and talk about stinking wrestling when we see each other. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, we might have a conversation, you know, a paragraph about it, but it's not like, it was very interesting to hear your take on a lot of that stuff. So I appreciate you coming on.
Oh man, thanks. I appreciate you having me, dude. It's it was definitely fun to talk about all the old times. Hey, tell them about the time I bought you a car.
Yeah, that's a true story. That's a true story. He bought my first car for me. I wasn't even 16 yet. I was 15, and it was an orange Ford EXP.
I couldn't even remember what it was.
Yeah, it was an orange Ford EXP, and I think it was an 86, but it was a hatchback. It was like only, not a hatchback. It was I forget what they call it, but it was just a 2-seater, and the back it was awesome.
Brad had just bought Steve a car when Steve turned 16, and I couldn't be one up. So when Brian,
he bought me for our first car. I appreciated it.
All right, I love you, dude.
Yeah, I love you too,
Scotty.
Scotty.
See you, man.
Great to see you. Thank you as well. And as we wrap things up, let me just make some quick plugs to close it out, because we're in Florida this weekend come check me out at Boca Raton Championship Wrestling, where Florida's finest will compete Sunday, May 15th. Check out BocaRatonWrestling.com for tickets and info to see Impact Steve Macklin, AEW Cesar Bononi, former NXT superstars Kona Reeves and MJ Jenkins, not to mention Brutus the Barber Beefcake. And yours
Beefcake
truly,
is coming out of retirement for Boca Raton
the
Wrestling.
voice of Boca Raton. Amazing. Florida. Next week, we'll be discussing the Roadie's debut, which Shawn Michaels did for Road Dogg to come into the WWF, being paired with Jeff Jarrett, singing and working and all those plans. What do you think we're going to be talking about with that there, Dog?
I think you'll probably be talking about how I threw it all away after 6 months. Look at that. This seems to be a trend in my career. Oh,
We're
Lord.
going to get
Well, at least,
into it.
can I get fired from a podcast? Is that
Well, I
possible?
hope not. That would affect
We're-
me.
I tell you what, I'm going to put that to the test.
I'm Pat. He's Dog, and this has been
Oh, you didn't know?